I'm the Space Quest historian, and welcome to the last video of 2018, and it's one of these talking to the camera, following up on some jazz that I've talked to the camera about previously. Hello camera, good to meet you, and hello everyone else who is now watching what the camera is picking up. This got meta in a hurry, didn't it? Anyway, welcome to my lawyer's office. You see, I have the official symbol for law and order and things, gavels and shit. Let's do this again. Anyway, the reason we're doing this is to follow up on the video that I did about how Activision, aka the Fun Police, stepped in and disrupted Al Lowe's fun, aka auctioning off his master discs for Leisure Suit Larry 1 and 2, and I think 3 actually. It's hard to check, seeing as those auctions have now been taken down. And there was some uproar about this, not just in the comments of my video, although certainly there was uproar in those as well. Just general uproar, as in how dare they, and this should be part of a museum. And understandably there were some people who were wondering why doesn't Al Lowe just donate to the Internet Archive, and that's a good question. I think Al should answer that and not me. Point is, there was uproar, an uproar of a somewhat justifiable character, I feel. However, to understand exactly why Activision did this, I needed to know more. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not even a smart person, so I had to reach out to someone who was both, and that someone turned out to be a man who puts an actual disclaimer at the top of his emails. His name is Marc Whipple, which is an awesome name, and he has a website called legalinspiration.com, where the first article I ran into had to do with the ROM takedown hullabaloo thingamajig, and that sort of led me to believe that I was in fact talking to the right person. And what I set out to ask Mr. Whipple about was, why does Activision do this? Why do they take down auctions? Why do they go after fan games? Most notably Space Quest 7, which was being made by fans but designed by Josh Mandel. They also went after the King's Quest fan game The Silver Lining, although they reached some sort of agreement there. But generally, Activision haven't been very kind to fan efforts. The only reason why I've been able to play Space Quest Incinerations and Space Quest 2 VGA and Valhalla Strikes Back is because no one told Activision about those. They just went ahead and made those games and crossed their fingers and hoped that Activision wouldn't notice, and thankfully they didn't. Space Quest 7 made the mistake of actually telling Activision that they were doing the game. And look where that got them. So what I wanted to find out was basically, why do they do this? And Mr. Whipple sent along a very lengthy email, and he has done his best to put this in terms that even a below layman like myself would be able to understand. First of all, as he says, it is very, very important not to confuse, conflate, or otherwise mix up the two terms intellectual property, patents. I fucked that up already. It is very, very important not to confuse, conflate, or otherwise mix up the terms patents, copyrights, and trademarks, because those are very different for very different reasons. Patents protect useful inventions, he says. It is quite rare to patent features from computer games, but it does happen. For the most part, we can ignore these because they're not necessary to do things like make sequels, etc. You could argue that the patents included in the SCI engine, if such even existed, have expired long ago. That doesn't mean that the underlying computer code couldn't still be copyrighted or trademarked. Wait, could it? No, actually, we're gonna get back to that. I think it's safe to say that the patent for the underlying code in the SCI games, and the AGI games, the early Sierra games, has expired, and it's sort of an open secret that the legal department at Sierra at the time wasn't very good at whatever it was they did. We hardly have to bring up Heroes Quest now, do we? So the argument that Activision put forth to shut down Mr. Lowe was in fact that the underlying computer code in Leisure Suit Larry, despite them not having the actual rights to Leisure Suit Larry, was infringing on their own, because the underlying computer code was used to run other games that they do make money off, such as Space Quest and King's Quest and so forth. So interesting turn there. I've been told, and I've sort of surmised that the legal argument, let's not put words into their mouth, the legal argument that Activision was making wasn't exactly going to hold up in court. I think you can demonstratively prove that the underlying computer code in the AGI and SCI engines is not being maintained. I highly doubt that it is, but that's not Mr. Whipple's argument, however. Let's move on. Copyrights protect artistic creations. Artwork is copyrighted, the text of a game's storyline is copyrighted, computer code is copyrighted. To a limited extent, original characters from stories are copyrighted. Copyrights have a term measured in many decades. Copyrights do not have to be enforced to maintain their status. Once you establish a copyright, it is yours. I could have copyrighted artwork and a dozen people could all make infringing copies for 20 years and I would still have valid copyright, and in the year 21, as in when the clocks just sort of turn over and we start over from year 0 again, I'm assuming, I could sue them for damages and get an injunction to make them stop. The only rule is I cannot sue them for damages more than 3 years old. So I could ask for damages for years 19, 20, and 21, but not year 18 or before. The elements of the Sierra properties that Activision has are copyrights in the original artwork, the original code, and the protectable elements of the original stories, including the characters. Do they really? Now see, I was under the impression that the copyrights, the legal bundle, you might say, everything pertaining to the Leisure Suit Larry stuff was all transferred to Codemasters and then sold off and then bounced around. It was sort of the only property that Activision didn't get in the divorce settlement that, you know, Sierra Online sort of went through. But this would imply that it is only the character, the situations, you know, the person of Leisure Suit Larry and his adventures, but the underlying code and such still in some way or form belongs to Activision. This gets weirder, doesn't it? And then we have trademarks. Trademarks serve to identify the source of a good or service, such as a computer game. Note that trademarks exist to protect consumers. The idea is that you see a certain trademark and you can be sure that the goods associated with it come from a consistent source. As such, trademarks are only enforceable if the use of a trademark by another person would cause a likelihood of confusion in the marketplace. So if we come up with Leisure Suit Barry, for instance, that's not gonna fly. So we are not really talking about trademark violations here. We are, however, apparently talking about a copyright violation. From Lowe selling the discs, he's not violating a patent, he is, however, violating a copyright. I'm learning too. So, to sum up, Activision owns the copyrights in the SO properties, significant others properties. What does SO stand for? I'm gonna assume the SO stands for some horseshit, as in horseshit, but with a silent H. And if they have, I'm gonna look it up. Well, according to abbreviations.com, it stands for shootout. I doubt this is what he means, but anyway, welcome back to my law firm. Yes, law consulting. Is me, yes, law person. To sum up, Activision owns the copyrights in the SO properties, and if they have maintained the association, which you mainly do by actively selling your product in association with the trademark, you still have at least some of the trademarks. Activision is still actively selling Space Quest and King's Quest. So, yeah, see these links and yeah. Goes on to say, in fact, the reason why Activision won't let anyone use the SO properties, they're still using them. They're selling collections of old games, they're licensing others. Leisure Suit Larry is licensed to Assemble Entertainment. They may have sold it to them outright, but I suspect if they just license the rights, they revert to Activision if Assemble stops publishing games or paying for the license. Oh. See, I was under the impression that Leisure Suit Larry was the one that got away, but apparently Leisure Suit Larry is licensed to other companies, as in the rights are actually being held by Activision. The copyright, the underlying copyright of Leisure Suit Larry is still being held by Activision. Still a flimsy argument, but becoming less flimsy, I have to say. The second reason is they want to maintain those trademarks, the value of the name associated with computer games. If they let If they let other people sell games with similar names, the association may be lost in the minds of the public. Oh, the stupid, stupid public. Not a direct quote. Which would mean Activision would no longer be able to protect the very valuable trademark rights. Yes, that's Leisha Suit Berry all over again. The third reason is the copyrighted materials are valuable assets which Activision is actively exploiting and may plan to exploit further in the future. Companies don't exist to give things away. No, they certainly fucking don't, do they? Not a direct quote. They may have, no, actually they do have, a duty to their shareholders to protect valuable property and to use it as seems most economically advantageous, which doesn't mean that they have to keep every plate spinning every second. For instance, Activision may plan a massive reboot of the Space Quest universe in 2022 as part of a master product delivery pipeline. They're probably not, but let's just play with the idea. AAA titles take years to develop, and major studios have a pipeline of product in various stages as well as emergency products they can drop into the pipeline if a planned product has an issue. This is a massive multiplayer RTS game involving development, sales, and marketing, all of whom are constantly pushing and pulling as their individual objectives require. Not that they are developing a massive multiplayer RTS game. It seems like it's a comparison. Actually doing, you got it, didn't you? Yeah. So, fans who say, well, I want to make Space Quest games and they're not making any right now. No, they're not making new ones right this minute. Sierra and Activision were both started in 1979. Activision is still exploiting properties they developed for the Atari 2600. They are in this for the long haul, and they are not letting this shit go. As long as they can make even just peanuts off of this shit, they are not letting it go. Fourth possible reason is that somebody at Activision wants to work with those properties, but for whatever reason can't. So they're fighting to keep them active and in-house so as to preserve the option. Even if the master product pipeline doesn't have any SO products in it right now. Oh, SO stands for Sierra Online. That took me so long to figure out. So long as it stays an Activision property, the opportunity is there. The sad part of that is that Activision does not want to play with the other boys in the sand pits, as it were. They do not want to give the impression that they are open to any sort of fan remakes, collaborations, new products, anything that would taint the idea of the product, the trademark, the copyright that they have over these properties, for fear that they might be somehow construed as official Activision products. And no, they cannot just in good faith tell someone, oh yeah, go ahead, and just put in writing that you know, you're not affiliated with Activision and everything will be fine. That's not how this works. So I think we should just be happy that we got the big 3 fan games that we did of Space Quest: Incinerations, Valhalla Strikes Back, and the Space Quest 2 remake. And they are only out there because once they were completed and released into the wild, there's nothing really you can do to recall those. So they exist sort of by the grace of the fact that they went under the radar for so long. I still maintain that it's somewhat of a flimsy argument to recall Al Lowe's auction, but from what I understand, having now fully read the email, should have done that before I started, but apparently Activision does hold more than just a tad of the underlying code to the other games in the Sierra Online catalog. Apparently they do have some hold over Mr. Larry Laffer himself, which means that they are actually somewhat in their rights to revoke anything that might sell something that you know, sell a brand that they're still actively holding on to. They're actively licensing this brand to other developers, currently that German developer. So that's an interesting turn of events. Now, this does not, in fact, I think, excuse them from, you know, resorting to what you could charitably call somewhat bully tactics, as in, we're big and fancy and you cannot play with our toys. But it does sadly sort of make sense from a legal standpoint, and I was in fact informed by some people on my Discord channel who have dealt with legal issues in the past, that the American legal system works in such a hideous way that if you let one instance slip, like if you're maintaining the copyright over something and you see something happening, some infringement, and you don't actively pursue it, as in pursue for it to be removed or taken down, then you are just not, you know, upholding your copyright. So it's sort of an either-or thing. Either you maintain your copyright with an iron fist, or you just let everyone walk all over you. And I don't think that's the legal term. I mean, you could ostensibly bring up in court that, hey, well, you let this one slip, so I think we're in the clear, guys. See, that's the problem. See, I was under the impression that Activision's argument against Lowe would not hold up in court. It might. Activision is within their rights, and that sucks. Whoa, I'm gonna have to stop myself right there. Hi, SQH from the future. Yes, just editing this vlog, and I feel I may have given Activision a slightly wide berth when it comes to my own personal views on these things. Yeah, I was maybe a bit too conciliatory when it came to what I actually feel about the subject. Now, one thing may be that Activision is in their right, as in their legal right, but the more I was pondering this and the more I was mulling over the situation as I was putting this video together, the less I feel Activision should get away with this. Because it's one thing to be within your legal right, and it is another thing to enforce that legal right by all means necessary. But it is an entirely different thing to just sit on it and do nothing. And maybe this came about because I was watching Ross's Game Dungeon last night and he had some choice words for developers who sit on a property and do nothing.
It pisses me off to no end when a company simply sits on intellectual property and lets games they don't even care about die because of how completely asinine our copyright law is. If you make a game but haven't sold it or supported it for 10 years or more and haven't been in a coma, why the hell should people be stopped from playing it or having it distributed? Don't answer that. There are no good reasons, only legal ones.
He was talking about abandonware at the time, but I feel it sort of translates to what we're talking about here. Now, granted, Activision are technically doing something. They're still selling the old games, and they may technically have a new title in the works, although let's be fair, they probably don't. So, this is purely motivated, I would say, by greed. They're greedy assholes. They don't want other people to play with their toys, and they're gonna sit on them as long as they make a buck. They're not gonna do anything new with them, and let's not kid ourselves. The King's Quest thing was a toe dipped in the water, and it didn't sell like absolute gangbusters, so they quietly just let it die. Just let the new Sierra, just let it die, let it fade into obscurity, and never do anything with it again. There's not going to be a new season of the new King's Quest, there's not going to be a new Space Quest, there's not going to be a new any of that shit. They're just going to let it die, they're just going to let the old collections sell, and that's it. Activision has no plans to do anything productive with this in the future. What they don't want is anyone else playing with it either, though. They don't want fans making new games, they don't want people selling off priceless artifacts for, you know, archival purposes. They're just being dicks. So that's my honest fucking opinion. Now, excuse me, I'm going to go back to my editing. So, have a happy new year, and have fun in 2019. And fuck you, Activision.